Peace and love, everybody. We're back for another Sunday Hope and Healing session. I'm Royce Fletcher Thomason, and I'm glad to be here and share some encouragement, some hope, some healing. And by the way, when I say healing, I literally do mean just that. Um, a lot of people have a lot of different situations and circumstances, challenges as it relates to their health. And I don't believe that it's the perfect will of God for anybody to be suffering from health challenges. Um, and while there are certainly things that are available that most people know about, there are other things that are available too. And I'm very thankful that I've been blessed to be a vessel of healing, a conduit of healing, if you will, uh, for 20 something years now. And I'm very, very thankful for that. And the reality of the matter is that nobody has to learn to live with pain. Nobody has to um, really be overly anxious about any particular diagnosis or prognosis. Um, the reality is that the body itself, the body itself is really a messenger, if you will, to get our attention for some other area where something needs to be addressed. There may be something that may be out of balance in a non physical way. And if we haven't caught it, it will end up showing up in a physical way, just because that's where we're most likely to pay attention to things. And quite frankly, if it makes its way to the physical, there have been signs and indications that have been leading up to it for a while that just had been missed or ignored. Curly Conscious King, good to see you this morning, my brother, or this afternoon. Glad to have you. Love, light, and many blessings flowing abundantly to you as well. Glad to have you here today. And the reality is, as I was saying, folks, is that there's there's so much more. There's so much more than what we really typically understand, recognize, or quite frankly, will even allow for. And uh, the truth of the matter is that, like I said earlier, it is perfect will of God for us all to be in a state of well-being. Scripture says, above all else, I would that you prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. And so, what happens is there are things that we kind of take on. They may be passed down genetically from one generation to another. There may be things that we had unresolved from fetal trauma or birth trauma or any form of physical, surgical trauma that we've experienced, or things that have happened that we've experienced as trauma on an emotional level, or even things that we have picked up from others, where others have dealt with some stuff. And, you know, there are times where we feel things and experience things that aren't even our stuff sometimes. Have you ever been in a room where you could feel the tension in the air? Or have you ever been in a space where you could feel the love that was in the air? You know, the reality is that we constantly have stuff that's being communicated to us 24/7, every day of every week. And some of that is being communicated to us in ways that are well beneath the conscious level of our awareness. They're deeply subconscious things that we're picking up, things we may be picking up from other people, things that may be going on within the collective consciousness of a particular group or even humanity itself. There are things that uh, that karmically may need to be resolved. What we sow, we shall reap, and that isn't in the context of punishment. Uh, that isn't in the context of punishment. It isn't that God wants to punish us for our misdeeds. It is that we were designed to operate in a certain way. Your vehicle, your car was designed to operate with a certain amount of air pressure in the tires. If you drive around with half the amount of air pressure in the tires that you're supposed to have, your vehicle just isn't going to be operating at the way that it was intended to operate. If you drive around with no oil in the engine, eventually your engine's going to lock up on you because it wasn't designed to operate that way. And so things that God puts in our path, and things that are being spoken to our spirit about the way that we need to go, or the certain things that we need to do, or certain things that we need to avoid, when we experience hardship and such as a function of not really lining up with that, it's not that God was seeking to punish us. It's that God was seeking to protect us in the first place from running into the brick road that was up ahead that we didn't see, or the brick wall that was up ahead that we didn't see. Okay, we were just plodding along, doing whatever it was that we wanted to do, and largely unconsciously. Okay, and so the reality of the matter is that there's sometimes, excuse me, I really needed my water this morning. There's sometimes situations where we subconsciously even sabotage ourselves. There are times where we might speak things out of our mouth. The power of death and life is in the tongue. Out of the same mouth comes blessings and cursings, and it ought not be so. It ought not be that way, Scripture says. And so there are things that we say, there are things that we speak over our own lives, there are things that we speak over other people's lives that are a function of our limited thinking, that are a function of our warped mindset sometimes. And it doesn't make you a bad person because you have limited belief systems, or that any of us have limited belief systems. That doesn't make us a bad person. It just limits us in being all that we were intended to be and all that we're capable of being. Okay, we were designed with perfection in mind. Does that mean that any of us are perfect, or that we will ever in this life as a human being, living and breathing, sucking wind, walking on planet Earth, will reach perfection? It doesn't mean that. But we're in the process of being perfected. And in the process, there are things that come up that get our attention. Sometimes it feels like a oops upside your head, sometimes, right? Sometimes we find ourselves in situations where, you know, we might end up trying to kind of wiggle ourselves out of a situation because we've kind of gotten ourselves into some trouble. And all of us do that. All of us do that. The question is, how do we recognize when we're doing it and do something about it? Well, that's where I believe that healing comes into place. You know, that's where I really believe a lot of that healing comes into place. Now, the reality of the matter is that most of us have stuff that going on that we don't even know we have going on. Sometimes other people can see it more clearly than we can, because it's sometimes easier to see other people's stuff than it is to see our own stuff. And it's even easier to point out sometimes other people's stuff than to see where what's going on in the exchange or in our interaction with somebody else is really pointing to something that we may need to work on within ourselves. The reality is that in the infinite wisdom of God, we were placed in a situation that was ideal for us to dwell in truth, though there are many lies in the world. Oh gosh, there are lies that other people tell. There are lies that we tell ourselves. And there are lies that we have collectively agreed to just line up with. But there's a greater truth. And the greater truth is that you, in spite of what you might sometimes feel like, in spite of what might be going on in your life that might be stressful or worrisome, or might cause some anxiety, or might have you overthinking about things sometimes, or that might trigger you and cause you to get really upset in one way or another. The reality is, in the midst of that, Beyond all of that, you are whole, you are perfect, and you are complete. I know that I said earlier, none of us is perfect. And let me kind of put that in context if I can. Um, we are perfect in our imperfection. Okay. That doesn't mean that there aren't things, we all have things that we need to work out in our lives. We all have opportunities for growth. We all have opportunities for expansion. We all have opportunities to learn and to open our hearts more. We all have opportunities to be a fuller version of ourselves, to meet a more radiant, resplendent example of the love and the power and the truth of God. Now, again, all of us fall short in that, and that's okay. I'm not saying this as a license to just keep on screwing up. We're going to, it's part of the process. But what I do want us to all understand is that just as we are right now, just as we are right now, it's okay. And at the same time, just as we are right now is not where we should be complacent to be. Okay. There is so much in us that is beyond what we generally even begin to comprehend. A lot of times when we're feeling angry or hostile towards people or groups or systems of the world, even situations that are outside of our control that we might try to control anyway. We have a lot of different ways that we try to manipulate things and bend things to our will. Um, I've got a coin that I carry in my pocket every day. And on this coin is a prayer that was, not many people know who came up with it, a guy by the name of Reinhold Niebuhr. He's a theologian that seminarians read and study. Um, but he was also a pastor in my hometown of Detroit, long time ago. His name is Reinhold Niebuhr. And there's a prayer that's a very common, very familiar prayer. I say it every day. I carry a coin in my pocket that has it um, embossed on it. And that's the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change. How many things do we get bent out of shape about that we can't change, that we can't do anything about, that our worrying about it doesn't change anything? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change. But there are some things that I can change, mainly things within myself, how I respond to different situations, how I address certain situations in my own life, and how I live in the world. Okay. Grant me the courage to change those things that I can and those things that are for me to address. Okay. And so there are some, quite frankly, there are some areas where we need to stay in our own lane. There are some situations where, we're trying to control stuff that, it doesn't really require our hand up in it. There's stuff that does, but there's stuff that doesn't. And so the last part of that prayer, grant me the wisdom to know the difference. Give me the wisdom to know the difference between what I can change and is mine to change, and the serenity to accept the things that I really am not intended to do anything about or can't do anything about. Okay. And so I believe that there's beauty in that. And in a similar way, I hope that we'll all uh, take heart and display the courage. Courage isn't the absence of fear. I heard Brene Brown say that there is no courage without risk, fear, or vulnerability. Okay. What courage is to stand in the midst of the fear or the risk or the vulnerability. Go ahead and shoot your shot anyway. To go for it. Even though it feels scary to admit that you are wrong. Because you don't want to be judged. It's courageous to do so. Even to stand up to your abuser and walk away from an unhealthy, toxic situation. It can feel very scary to do that. But doing it anyway brings courage. It can be terrifying to allow other people to see what you believe are your weaknesses or what you believe are your vulnerable spots, things that you may feel ashamed of, things that you might have experienced in your lifetime, or even things that you might have done in your lifetime that you may have felt ashamed of, and to open your heart and allow someone else to see that wound and to be emotionally naked with another human being. It takes courage to do that. It takes courage to do that. To acknowledge that something's out of balance. Sometimes, different people have different ways of dealing with certain things. That we all have things that come up that we feel uncomfortable about. Different people have different ways of addressing those things that we feel comfortable about. Some people will have like patterns of avoiding certain situations. I'll just not deal with it. Act like it doesn't exist. It doesn't make it not exist. But it helps it to maybe not feel so uncomfortable. And it takes courage to allow yourself to feel the uncomfortable feelings. Addictions are rooted in people seeking to escape uncomfortable feelings. Whether that's an addiction to pornography, an addiction to alcohol, an addiction to drugs, social media addiction, right? Addiction to trying to control people. All of that is a way to keep from feeling something that feels uncomfortable. It takes courage sometimes to allow ourselves to feel the uncomfortable feelings and to work ourselves through them. This too shall pass. It won't last forever. There have been times that I've shared in the past during our Sunday Hope and Healing sessions. I just realized I'm using a different computer. I'm at my brother's house. And I'm using my laptop, and it dawned on me as I saw a text message come across the screen that I did not turn off the notifications on the computer. I don't want my computer to start ringing. That's actually happened before. I digress. But I want to encourage all of us to be courageous enough to allow ourselves to shed light in the dark places within us. That's what I was starting to say earlier, before the text message appeared on my computer screen. That, I've said on a couple different occasions during these Sunday Hope and Healing sessions that, there are certain areas in our lives where we have shadows, where there's some dark areas. There's pain that we experienced in the past, stuff that happened in the past that we don't want to revisit again. And we'll do a lot of stuff to keep ourselves, we'll create a lot of distractions sometimes to keep ourselves from experiencing that pain again. I get it. I get it. But sometimes we need to address the wound at the root cause. We all have different shadows. Sometimes we just need to shine some light on it, because that's when the healing happens. That's when the healing happens. It's okay to feel the uncomfortable feelings. It's okay to look at the ugly stuff, even within ourselves. And we've all got some stuff in ourselves that may not look too cute, right? We prefer to look good to ourselves and in the eyes of others. Nobody wants to feel like they look bad to themselves or to anybody else, right? And sometimes we'll do things to, we'll do a lot of stuff to cover up what we don't want people to see. A lot of times we do a lot of things to cover up what we don't want people to see. We'll dress up the surface to hide the stuff beneath the surface that feels uncomfortable or that we don't like, or that we're afraid to let someone else see, or even that we're feeling afraid to look at ourselves. But there's good news. There's good news, and that's that there's a way to address those things, a way to address them where you don't even have to go through all the drama of it. And that's something that I love about this work that we call Transcending the Matrix. It's a way to bring love into the places where we felt loveless. It's a way to bring light into the places where there's been darkness. It's a way to bring compassion in a tender and gentle and non-judgmental way, in a way that results in some very, very profound healing. And I say to people who do this work, I say it a lot. By the way, keep in mind that we've got a TTM support session this Wednesday at 7 o'clock Eastern via Zoom for those who are here today who've done the training. But I say a lot, and I'll continue to say it because I truly believe it. There's profound healing that takes place that shows up with the person who's receiving the healing. And that could be a pain that's gone on for a long time that relieved. We've actually during our live broadcast, we've helped people to to experience transformation. They were dealing with COVID. The person wasn't even on the broadcast. Somebody's loved one was on the broadcast and mentioned it in the chat, and we addressed it, and they followed up with me and said how much better they felt as the broadcast went on. That person who didn't even know about the broadcast taking place, who actually received the healing. It was directed towards that person. We've seen just a lot of really wonderful, amazing things happen with people. Profoundly transformative things happen with people. And I believe that who benefits from it even more than the person who's receiving the healing on some level is the person who's standing as that vessel of healing, if you will. I say all the time, that God is the healer. Ultimately, God is the healer. But things that God does through vessels. God gives a sense of awe and wonderment at the sight of an exquisite sunrise or sunset, or a beautiful view, whatever that view might be. God works through music to speak to us in different ways. There are million, billion, trillion, quadrillion ways in which God has to work in and through us, to touch us, to speak to us, to get our attention, to bless us, right? And I believe that in the infinite wisdom of God, God chooses to operate through vessels. I'm thankful to be a vessel of the healing. God ultimately is the healer. Make no mistake about that. We get to be vessels of healing, and the tool through which that healing is made manifest is love. And having done thousands upon thousands of treatments, if you will, healing treatments, conducting healing sessions with individuals and groups, live and remotely, and even through the context of these live streams, every time my heart gets touched because I'm called to operate from a heart space within me. And occasionally people speak to my heart and say that I've got a really good heart. And I believe that that's true. It's not something that I take credit for, but I mean, I do believe that it's true. But something that God has used to really bring that forth is His healing work. It's allowed me to reach places of compassion and warmth that I had never had before, just through this healing work. And like I said earlier, love is the tool through which the healing is made manifest. God is the source through which healing is made manifest. Me or other practitioners are the vessels through which it's made manifest. But love is the tool through which it's made manifest. Now, I'd like to take a moment and check in with you all. I know that we've got some people who are here. I don't know who all is here. I've only seen a limited amount of comments in the chat, and those have only come, or that comment has only come from YouTube. I don't see any comments from Facebook. If anybody is viewing this from Facebook right now, which I have a feeling there's somebody out there viewing through Facebook as we're going live from my personal page as well as from the Transcending the Matrix group page. But I'd like to check in with you all for a little bit, see how you're doing out there. In the words of Daryl McDaniels, how y'all feel out there? Somebody picked that up. Maybe not everybody. Somebody picked that up. Layla, it's always such a blessing to see you. Sending bountiful, bright blessings and radiant love and light over the pond to your direction. I hope that things are well with you in your life and in the life of everybody that you love and care about, and in the life of everybody who loves and cares about you. Bountiful, bright blessings to you. Who else is out there, and how are the rest of you all feeling? Is there anybody who could use some healing in any particular area? Maybe it's a physical pain, maybe it's a particular health condition, maybe it's something that you're on medication and you just feel like you'll need to take medication for the rest of your life or for a certain amount of time. And I'm not going to tell you to not do anything the doctors have said to do. We can give you something else that can benefit you. Okay. We can give you something else that can benefit you. And it's not just going to benefit your physical health, it's going to benefit you in your soul. I know this because I've seen it again and again and again and again. And just remembering there was a time I did work with somebody and they were having issues with their shoulder. We did healing work for their shoulder and they ended up having increased business. New business opportunities ended up opening up for them. Thank you, Layla. That's very kind of you to say. That's very kind of you to say. If there's anything that is maybe creating for anyone, creating any sense of worry or concern, or anything that you're even pondering about, that you would like things to unfold a certain way, any area where you think that things might just be a little stagnated, uh, or even something that's going well, that you would like to see things taken to the next level. I certainly won't impose this on you, but the opportunity is certainly here and available for you. And that's an interesting thing about opportunity. Sometimes opportunities are present in a moment, and then we let them sometimes slip away from us. As I say that, I'm thinking about times I've been in random places like the grocery store, and I'll feel this little nudge to say something to somebody. And usually I have no clue why I'm getting this inclination to say what it is that I'm being charged to say to somebody. And I'll sometimes have these slight little arguments, or this like slight little internal dialogue going on. It's like, I'm gonna go just up to this random stranger and say that they don't know me. I mean, look at me like I'm crazy. Sometimes it's dealing with something with their health, and I have no idea. I remember a situation where there was this lady in the grocery store. This is some time ago, and I just felt led to walk up to her and tell her, God wants you to know it's going to be all right, that everything's going to unfold just fine. I didn't know what that person's response to me was going to be, but I was glad that I did it because it was confirmed that it needed to have been said, and she definitely received that. And it made a difference in her life. She was actually going to be undergoing surgery the next morning, and she had been feeling anxious about it. I didn't know that. I had no idea. I had no idea. Now, can I tell you the truth? There have been times I felt that little nudge and I didn't do anything about it. I've been driving in my car going somewhere. Might have seen somebody on the street. There have been times that I just let it go. And, I let it go. And then I felt like, you know what? That was a missed opportunity. I think I was supposed to have done something. I think I was supposed to have said something in that situation. And I didn't do it. Now, I don't go beating up on myself for very long, but I do experience this feeling like, no, that was Spirit was nudging me. The Spirit was nudging me to say something there. And I didn't. And, I don't like that feeling of being charged to do something and not doing it, you know. Um, but opportunities come, and sometimes opportunity might come back. There are times that opportunities come, and then once that moment is missed, the moment is just missed. The moment is just missed. And so I don't want you all to miss your moment. Yeah, I said earlier, sometimes it requires some courage. Sometimes it may be a risk to put yourself out there a little bit. Sometimes that can feel scary, a little scary to do that. But it's okay. It's not going to last that long. It's not going to last that long. And it can really pay off for you. It can really pay off for you. And so if there's anybody who's dealing with any kind of condition, situation, or concern, I extend to you this opportunity to share, and you don't have to share all of the details. But if there's any area in which you'd like some support, some healing support, please let us know. We're more than happy to offer it. It could change your life. It could be life changing for you. I'm speaking from my own personal experience. I'm speaking from my own personal experience. I had an opportunity a long, long time ago to essentially sit at the feet of a very wise soul who seemed to know the root cause of every sickness known to man and how to address it and deal with it. My life has been completely transformed ever since. I can't even tell you in how many ways. I can't even tell you in how many ways. And it all came from saying yes at a time where I really honestly could have very easily said no. Somebody extended an invitation to me, and I could have very easily said no. And I only honestly, just to tell the truth, only said yes to be polite. But if I had not said yes, what are some areas where you might need to say yes in your life? What are some areas in your life where you may need to say yes? There's a movie, um, I believe it was starring Jim Carrey, called The Yes Man. And he had to say yes to everything uh, in that movie. Jim Carrey was in it, and Damien, if you're on, remind me the Jess. What's the lady's name that played Jess? Because she was in that same movie. I'm trying to recall her name. Um, it's escaping me at the moment. But anyway, he had to essentially say yes to everything. But really, at the end of the day, what the lesson was that there were so many things that he wanted to say yes to that he didn't, that he said no to, that he wanted to say yes to. And learning how to really say yes to the things that you really want, the things that you really want to say yes to. And you're given these opportunities, they're going to make a favorable impact on your life. Just say yes to them. There's a Zoe Deschanel. Thank you, D. Zoe Deschanel. Um, Jim Carrey and Zoe Deschanel in the movie. Yes, man. I encourage you to check it out. There's also a movie um, called Yes Day and Yes Day or The Yes Day, something like that. There are these parents that had been having some challenges with the children, and if I recall, no, I might be mixing up the premise of the premise of this other movie. Um, but it was another movie in which they like had to take on saying yes to things, um, and allow themselves to like just essentially just really fully live, just really fully live, and create a different life experience for themselves and their family. What are some areas I'd like to hear from you all? What are some areas where you could stand to say yes? What's something that you could stand to say yes to? Maybe something that you've been reluctant about saying yes to. That uh, there can be a lot of. I've got a friend, Spencer Murray, who talked about the power of no, and he talked about the power of a no, and talked about the power of a yes, and both of them can have power. And the key is knowing when there needs to be a no and saying no, and knowing when there needs to be a yes. Pardon me, and saying yes. And so I encourage us to just kind of get in touch with that. Right now, the focus is on yes. What are some areas where you could stand to say yes? Reverend Shirley, greetings and peace and love to you. Many blessings to you. To feel the fear and to do it anyway. I heard that. It can be so scary. We talk about the acronym FEAR is false evidence appearing real. False evidence appearing real. In the ancient Sanskrit, there's a single word for that. It's called Maya. It's typically translated as illusion. What it really means is that things aren't really as they seem. Things aren't really as they seem. So often there's stuff that we think that if we take that step, it's going to be the end of us. We feel like terrified of taking the step. It might be leaving a job or moving to a new place. It might be saying yes to a new opportunity. It might mean closing a chapter in your life to make room for a new chapter. So many different things. And, there's that little negative voice that is always happy to have it say and to borrow your ear, to discourage you from doing the stuff that you really would serve yourself well to do. And that's that false evidence appearing real. But there's another acronym, a way to take power over that thing, using those same letters, FEAR. And that's face everything and rise. Yeah. It's all right to feel the fear. Feel the fear and do it anyway. The voice that's going to present that false evidence that appears real it's going to have its say. It's probably going to be the first to speak, quite frankly. It's probably going to be the first to speak. But go ahead and face it. Face the thing that you're afraid of and get the power over it. As my brother Spencer Murray also says, do the thing and get the thing that you're afraid of, do the thing and get the power. I appreciate what you said, that you started working on that yourself. Yeah, I hear you. Let's do some healing as it relates to that. Okay. So Reverend Shirley was the first brave soul, courageous soul to speak up and address it. And then we got a little bit of further dialogue on that. Let's address that. It's something that I think that we can all use some support regarding. So God, I thank you for this opportunity, for your truth to come forth in the presence of the false evidence that appears real. God, I know you to be a healer. And through the union that we share, through the power of your pure love and your Holy Spirit, the God in me demonstrates you as a healer on the behalf of all of those tuned in to this right now, all of those catching it on the replay, all of those who are open and receptive to it. Neutralize the root cause of all false evidence appearing real and all cumulative effects, the stagnation, the feeling bound, the anxiety that results in all of that, from the point of the causal root in the entire cellular structure, every strand of DNA in every cell of our bodies, transmuting that into and replacing it with the courage to face everything and rise. And with the fulfilled experience of having faced that false evidence appearing real, challenged it, overcome it. and rising in victory as a result of it. And I bear witness to our wholeness on this date and in this time and space called now. Thank you. Thank you, God, for this gift of your divine love. It is done. It is done. It is done. All right, so let's get a little healing regarding this right now. And so first thing that's coming up for me right now is trauma. There's things that we've experienced in the past that were traumatizing, and we don't want to have to go through that trauma again. And so I'm looking at like 972,300 different occasions where there's been some trauma effect. And we want to address all of that from the point of the root cause and shine the light of God's love into all of those dark corners, all of those secret chambers hidden within the hidden recesses of our soul where we've tucked away that pain or tucked away those experiences and tried to protect ourselves from ever having to experience it again. There's a way we can be protected without putting up the wall. I'm about to feel my help coming on. I'm going to try to not preach right now, but I'm about to feel my help coming on with that. There are a lot of things that were coming up. So that's definitely looking stronger and looking better. Okay. Actually, let's look at just dealing with things that we've experienced in terms of feelings of judgment and condemnation. Judgment and condemnation from other people in particular. So we're speaking the light of God's love into those places. And by the way, the healing is not about the words that are coming out of my mouth. The words that are coming out of my mouth are just so that you won't be bored. There are no words that are required for the healing to take place. It would just be boring if I was just sitting here silently on the live broadcast. So we're addressing this with some words. That's looking better. Let's look specifically at replacing that sense of judgment and condemnation with unconditional love, unconditional acceptance. I heard a man that I forever be grateful for, and highly, highly respect. Dr. Cam Ewan, say that unconditional love really is unconditional acceptance. And so I speak to all of us, opening up space within us to make room for unconditional acceptance. And in spite of the judgment or condemnation that we might have felt in the past, making room for unconditional acceptance, that we first and foremost, in spite of anything and it all, that we deeply and completely love and accept ourselves. So I told you earlier about one thing that is on my person every single day. Coin that's in my pocket that has a serenity prayer. There's also something else that's on my person every day, and that's this pendant. This pendant deals with the unconditional love of God. It comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 13 in the Bible, talking about the unconditional love of God and how it's patient and kind and it doesn't envy and it's not proud and then it doesn't boast. It doesn't dishonor others or seek its own way. It's not easily angered and it keeps no record of wrongs. Can your brain even process that? The love of God keeps no record of your wrongs. The love of God keeps no record of your wrongs. So we want to make room for that. We want to make room for that within you, receiving that, truly receiving that. Again, it's not a license to just act a fool, but there's nothing that you can do to make God stop loving you. That doesn't mean you do whatever because God's going to love you anyway. What it means is allow your heart to be so touched by love so beautiful, so deep, and so profound that you can't help but to fall in love too. And because of your love for God and your love even for yourself, you don't want to go doing the stupid stuff. What's the stupid stuff? Well, you can name that for yourself better than I can. All right? Talk about a love that doesn't delight in evil, doesn't delight in bad things happening to folks, but rejoices with the truth. A love that always protects, keeps you safe. You don't have to be on guard all the time. Love that always trusts. How can God trust you in all of the foul stuff that you've done in your life? God trusts God's own design and that you'll make your way back home to where you need to be. Always hopes. No matter how far off track you get, there's that unconditional love of God that sees a brighter future for you. Always perseveres. And love is going to slow walk you down, even if you're trying to run from it. And it's not going to give up on you. God's not giving up on you. And I don't know who needs to hear this, but you've made some mistakes in your life. You've done some foul stuff. You've done some dirt. Your actions have hurt some people. And at other times, your lack of action hurt some people. And sometimes that person was even you. You might do some things that you know is the wrong thing to do. There might be a way that you're abusing yourself or somebody else. And you know it's not right, but you don't seem to be able to do any differently. But God's not giving up on you. The person who wrote most of the New Testament, the Apostle Paul, said himself, the things that I would do, I don't end up doing. And the things that I would not do, I still end up doing them somehow anyway. This was a man who God had touched him in such a way that even his handkerchief could heal people. Somebody coming in contact with his handkerchief and they got a healing. If God could do that with somebody like that, God can do wonderful and amazing things with somebody like you too. God's love is not giving up on you. And God's love, this unconditional love of God, it never fails. Why? Because God is love and God never fails. As the songwriter said, love always wins. In the end, love always wins. Relationships don't always work out, but in the end, the unconditional love of God always wins because God always wins. And if you're not seeing the win yet, then you've not seen the end yet. There are a lot of questions you might have regarding that. I'm not going to get completely into it right now. So we're going to make room for receiving receiving God's grace, receiving God's mercy is a function of receiving God's love. And the more and more we're able to receive God's love, the more we're able to extend God's love. The more we're able to receive God's forgiveness, the more we recognize how much forgiveness we have needed, the more readily we can forgive others. The more grace we recognize we need, the more grace we can extend to others. That doesn't mean giving anybody a pass for their poor behavior, but we can still extend, we can put up some boundaries and not put ourselves in certain situations that are unhealthy for us, but we can still extend grace at the same time. We can still extend grace at the same time. Thank you, Reverend Shirley, for that. Whatever arises, love that. Whatever arises, love that, by Matt Kahn. Yeah. Oh boy, this is not for the faint at heart, I'm telling you. This is not for those who just want to go around casting blame on everybody and their mama. This is for the folk who want to be spiritually mature. And by the way, if you're watching this and you have the courage to be spiritually mature, that doesn't mean constantly go calling other people out on their inability or their unwillingness to be spiritually mature, because that's not necessarily so spiritually mature. What I realize, it's constantly brought into my awareness how judgmental I've been in my life. I've considered at many points in my life even spiritually superior to other people. It sounds bad to even say that. I cringe even thinking about it, if I'm just going to be real with you. But I have to acknowledge there's been times that I've had that mindset. And over and over and over and over again, God has extended to me the grace to be able to see myself and to see my own error. And the more error I see in myself, the more I recognize I'm not in a position to judge anybody. I'm truly not in a position to judge anybody. Maybe my dirt isn't their same dirt, but dirt is still dirt. Maybe my issue isn't somebody else's particular issue, but an issue is still an issue. And so, let us truly check out the stuff that is going on within our spectrum of view. Let us check the lenses through which we're looking at life, ourselves, and others. Because whatever filter we're looking through, it's going to color how we're going to see everything that we see, including other people and circumstances and situations. And let's address our own, as Jesus put it, plank in our own eye. Let us get that out. It also said, if your eye is single or if your eye is whole, if you don't have any plank in your own eye, then your whole body will be filled with light. I'm filled with more light because God has blessed me to serve as a vessel of healing. And in the process of that, a lot of that judgmentalism has fallen off of me. And I'm able to see people from a more compassionate place. I'm able to see myself in other people. People who may look, think, worship love, vote, and all these other things very differently than me. But being able to get beyond those things and see that in the final analysis, we're one. And as I connect to the love of God in my own heart and welcome them into that space, welcome them into that space within my own heart. The places in them where there's been darkness clears up, the light shines. And healing ends up being made manifest. Do you know how humbling that is? Is it possible for the ego to trip on that? Yeah, it is. I'll just be honest with you about it. Yeah, it is. But the more you do it, you realize it's not about these healings. They're not about me one bit. They're not about me one bit. They're about an opportunity. There was a time where there was a man who was born blind. And his followers, his disciples asked, or then the people asked, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his error or his parents' error that he was born blind? Now, in terms of it being about his error, why he was born blind, I'm not going to address that right now. I'll let you think about it. But his response was, I don't want you to focus on that right now. Look at it this way. This man was born blind so that God could be glorified. This healing that I get to participate in, yeah, there's stuff that happened. There's gook that we've taken in, from things that people have said to us, things that we've said and done to others, and all of this stuff, right? That ends up manifesting in something other than us dwelling in a state of complete physical, mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual harmonium, if you will, complete well-being, if you will. Yeah. But the reality is, in the final analysis, it isn't about that. It isn't even about me being able to see where you've messed up and to bring love into that. It isn't even about that. Ultimately, it's about the love just flowing more fully. Because that's the essence of what God is all about. Wanting our hearts to be touched and transformed through the power of pure, unconditional love. And for us to be able to operate from that space. The mark of a spiritual person is not the person who's always doing the right things by the book, per se. I'm not saying that is no component of it or that doesn't have a place. But the mark of a truly spiritual person is that they're doing things from a heart space that isn't based on what they specifically are going to get out of it necessarily. It's not about them saying, how am I going to get over on this person or get over on that person, but just operating from a genuine heart space, being a vessel through which God can operate, seeing God in anything and everything, whether it's, a beautiful piece of music or poetry or art, the vastness of the ocean or the Grand Canyon, the Northern Lights, the way that a hummingbird is magically able to hover in midair, the way that a dragonfly can fly up, down, left, right, forwards or backwards, the way that a caterpillar enters creates the chrysalis and metamorphosizes inside of it, fights its way to break through it, developing its wing muscles enough to be able to fly as a butterfly. You know, whatever it is, seeing a parent do something really special for their child, or a child do something really special for their parent, or some random act of kindness, whatever it is that might touch you, or move you, or inspire you. It's a way that God is just showing up. It's a way that God is just showing up. And you might see God in those things, those beautiful things. It can also be a blessing to see the presence of God in loaning your laptop to somebody and it stops working in their presence, and you're left now without a computer. And something that happened to me. That was what caused me to be in a situation that ultimately ended up being what caused me to be in a situation where I was introduced to a teacher whose life my life was transformed as a result of, and getting an opportunity to study Chinese energetic medicine and learn that there was so much more in terms of our health than what it was that we were seeing, that there was much more beneath the surface than what we were seeing. It was only because, and really that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't gotten kicked out of seminary. Ended up starting another ministry, Free People Center for True Love and Wisdom. I had loaned laptop to a person that I was dating at the time. Stopped working while it was in her presence. Ended up having to go to my mother's house to use her computer. Right at the corner where she lived, there was an Office Max. Their Office Depot now, it was called Office Max at that time. I had to go there to print the materials that was for this ministry, this new ministry. The guy who was there printing things, his name was Paul, offered to show me things he had done for other people in the event that I wanted business cards or anything else done, any other printed needs done. I only said yes to be polite, to be honest with you. When he asked me if I wanted to see anything else he did for anybody else, I said yes, just to be polite. I wasn't really interested, quite frankly, but I said yes. Everything he pulled out was on this Chinese doctor, 35th generation Shaolin master. I had an opportunity to train in basic, intermediate, and advanced levels of Chinese energetic medicine under him after there was a doctor who had been practicing medicine for 35 years that was in that basic level of training. He said he learned more in that basic level of training about healing than he did in all of his years of school, medical school, and 35 years of practicing medicine. Okay. So there are things that happen in our lives. At the time, getting kicked out of seminary and them questioning my sanity didn't feel good. Was it hard to see God in that situation? At the moment, it wasn't so easy. I'm a person who literally not killed an insect. And they were asking my mentor from college, who had become the president at the school, if he felt safe being alone in a room with me. That was absolutely absurd. It was absolutely absurd. And then ultimately getting kicked out of ministry for the official reason being the paperwork said does not demonstrate a promise for ministry. Well, that didn't feel so good at the time. It didn't feel good at all. But was the hand of God at work in that? If the hand of God was not at work in that, I wouldn't be the healer that I am now. God has blessed me to minister to and to teach people at all levels of knowledge and intellect, of virtually every world religion. This healing work is known across the world. That wouldn't have happened had those other things not happened. If I hadn't gotten kicked out of seminary, where I got the laptop, no, it was a previous seminary that I transferred from. There's so many different things that have happened. The reality, folks, is that God's hand is at work all the time. So that's why scripture says, in everything give thanks. You don't know what the why or the wherefore is for things that are happening in the midst of them happening. But all things really are working together for our good. And if we can allow ourselves to see that, if we're going to allow ourselves to make room for it, even if we can't see it, and keep our eyes open and trust that there is an unconditional love of God that is at work in our lives, that's always persevering, always working to bless us in some way, we can relax, be a little less anxious, try to control things that are outside of our control a little bit less, hold on to a greater degree of serenity, display the courage to take on those things that might feel scary, and to move forward in the midst of those things, to allow our hearts to be touched, and to woosa, take a chill pill and relax, and not be such a hellion. Yeah, I said it. What ways are you being a hellion, raising hell? We weren't intended to raise hell. We were intended to download heaven. There's enough hell raising going on as it is. We were intended to download heaven. Let's download heaven, folks. Let's download heaven. How do you do that? Jesus said, folks tell you the kingdom of heaven is over there, over there. Don't believe that. The kingdom of heaven is within you and all around you, scripture says. How do you download it? By letting it show up in you. By letting the light of God's love completely fill you to the point where there's no room for anything else. And everything that you see, think, and do is coming from that space. That's why scripture says, that's why Jesus said, seek first the kingdom of God. All this other stuff that you're concerned about will fall in place. I'm just having a good time today, I tell you. I'm at my brother's sister-in-law and niece/goddaughter's house. I haven't seen any of them yet today, and it's 2:14. But I admit that I'm having a good time just hanging out with you all today. And I see my cousin Ketrin. Hey, Ketrin. Sending love to you. And sending love to you all. We're going to go ahead and get ready to wrap this up. So let's deal, I want to take a moment and deal with the root cause of our resistance to love and the fear that we won't be able to really experience it in the way that we want it. We want to welcome the light of God's love into that space. To all the places where we've been hurt in the past, to all of the places where we could be hurt in the future. We want to bring the light of God's love into that, so that we can be more fully aligned with the blessings of God opening up and unfolding for us, and for us to be able to see the hand of God at work in every moment, situation. That can help give us the courage to face, to stand in the presence of the false evidence that appears real, and to face everything and rise. Because we know that in the end, love always wins, that love always protects, and we can go forth knowing that we're protected. This brings to mind, there was an article written in the Detroit News or the Detroit Free Press in the late 80s. And the headline read something like, "Bullets Melt in Front of Them." Took place somewhere on the African continent. I don't recall exactly where, but there were these folks who were going around. There's a band of folks that was going around just terrorizing people, shooting up villages and such. Just giving folk a really, really hard time. There was a young man, very young man, like college age. He's like 20 years old or something like that. He organized a group of young men, like 14 to 20. He might have been 21. He organized people younger than him to stand up to these people who were terrorizing all of these folks. He told them, the bullets can't harm you. You don't have to be afraid. The only way the bullets can harm you is if you run and try to hide. In this article, it talked about how the men with guns, saw these young men, these boys, most of them. When they saw them, they would drop their guns and run the other direction. Because there were times where they would be right at point blank range and shoot at them and couldn't hit them. Because they knew they were protected. Somehow this anointed young man was able to convince these younger men, even younger than him, that they were protected. The love of God always protects. But in fear and running away from your protection, you make yourself susceptible to danger. But when you know that you're protected and you don't question it, you don't doubt it, you feel confident in that, you are protected. You are safe. I'm telling you, listen, I keep getting so tempted to preach today. I'm not going to preach at you. But what I do want to say is, hey, listen, let's go forward. Let's go forward. I call forth into the presence of each and every one of us divine protection, that we have the courage to face what we need to face, the courage to take on what is ours to take on, the serenity to let be that which we cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference. God, thank you for the healing that's taken place, for the light of your love that's gone forth on today, and for the ways that all of us are blessed. We thank you for all of these blessings in this time and space that we call now. Ashe, Amen, Aho, it is done, so mote it be, in Hashem Yeshua HaMashiach. God bless you all. It was a pleasure to have you here today, as it always is. Remember that there is nothing that is beyond God's ability to heal. We are made in the image and likeness of God. God loves us, and it's okay for us to make room for that love. A function of that love is the miracles that can take place, including miracles of healing. And those are available to you. I want you to allow yourself to be open to receive it. Allow yourself to be open to receive that. Okay? Now, this work that I do, it's not something that's unique to me. It's something that any of us can do. Something that any of us can do. We just need to align with it. And I can show you how to do that. I can show you how to do that. I'm more than happy to. If that's something that interests you at all, reach out to me. I'm an approachable person. I'm more than happy to share with you how you can tap into this for yourself and for the benefit of others as well. I can promise you, if you do so, it's going to make a beautiful impact on your life as well. And it's going to make a beautiful impact on the lives of the people in your life. You know, one of the reasons it's important for us to experience healing is because that people we care about need it. Your loved ones need the best version of you. The part of you that's still unhealed in areas is the part that ends up creating areas for them to still need more healing, right? The more healing that you allow for, the more healing you allow to come up in your own life, the better version of yourself you're able to be. The safer space you're able to be for other people to come to you. The less chaos you're creating in the world. Yeah. But beyond that, love yourself enough. Love yourself enough to allow room for healing to flow. Okay? Will you do that for yourself? Will you do that for yourself? I encourage you to. One of the greatest decisions I've made in my life, the greatest decision I've made in my life, is to give my life to God. In the context of that, one of the greatest decisions I've made in my life is giving myself to this healing work. Because at the end of the day, every treatment that I do, something in me gets to get healed too, as well as that other person. And so there's more light and there's more love that's flowing on the planet. There's more goodness, there's more grace that's flowing on the planet. I could go on forever and a day, but I'm going to go ahead and sign off for now. Anybody who may want to sew into the work that we're doing, you're certainly welcome to do that. Scrolling at the bottom of the screen, Cash App, $ Royce F. Thomason. You want to make the investment, we welcome that. Whatever way it goes, I pray God's richest, most bountiful, most beautiful blessings upon you in your life, knowing that one of those blessings is seen and experience the blessings as blessings. So my grandfather, my late grandfather, John A. Hall, used to say, if you don't know you're blessed, you might as well be cursed. I don't want you to be cursed. I want you to be blessed, and I want you to know that you're blessed, because there's a blessing in knowing that you're blessed. God bless you. I love you. And I send you forth as I do every week as we work to experience that sustainable state of supreme satisfaction. I send you forth in your day, in your week, in your life with peace,